Episode 2 of the CCS ESSER Roundtable Discussion. Episode 1 focused on our communications department. Today, we are proud to have Jeff Rowe, Director of Buildings and Grounds, and Chris Baker, the Director of Safety and Security, to help us understand how ESSER funds were utilized to support the necessary pivots during the pandemic and how we have taken those lessons learned during that time to sustain impactful change. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Thank you.
I don't know which one of you wants to start, but let's just start with a brief introduction of your department and how your department supports teaching and learning. Jeff, you want to take that?
Sure. Well, hi, Tracie. Thanks for the introduction. So, with Buildings and Grounds, we maintain the built environment within the district. That mostly includes the buildings themselves and some work on the exterior of the building in partnership with custodial services. So the HVAC, the roofing, flooring, paint, mouse control, hazardous material control, anything with the structure.
Great. All the things that we have to have school, right?
To have school in person.
In person.
Turns out.
Yes. Thank you. And Chris, tell us about safety and security.
Yes, thank you, Tracie, for having us. So the Safety and Security Department is unique in itself, and we have a large responsibility to the district to provide simply safety and security for all individuals that enter into any school district building, the schools, elementary, middle, high, and our administrative buildings. The most important thing with our staff, they build healthy relationships with the students to ensure that they have a safe learning environment, which is why they come to school, right? They will love to be safe while they're learning. And then they also be able to share with another adult that's what's going on inside the school community, as well as what's going on inside their exterior communities where they live every day. So having that healthy relationship with our staff goes a long way, will help us mitigating any situations that could occur that are being carried in from over the weekend. So just having those staff members in those school buildings every day is huge for the district.
Yes. And one of the things I know as a teacher during the closure was trying to build those relationships remotely, and it's just not the same. Like you said, it's not the same as in person. So, gentlemen, take us back to March 13th, 2020, when Governor DeWine came on TV and ordered all of the schools across the state to close. Tell us what was going through your mind and the immediate impact that had on how your departments operate.
All right, well, I'll go first. At the time, I was the energy manager for Columbus City Schools, which includes the HVAC department. And immediately through my head, I was worried about freezing the buildings. Without staff in the buildings doing work, these assets continue to deteriorate, and they deteriorate pretty fast without anybody watching them. Luckily, this closure started in the middle of March, and most of the freezing concerns were over, which is just lucky. Buildings and Grounds was off of in-person work for approximately 6 weeks, and in that time we got fairly lucky in that there weren't major disasters within the buildings while our staff were simply not doing anything but emergency work.
Yeah, so Chris, like Building and Grounds, your department really can't operate the way it's supposed to without that person-to-person contact.
Absolutely. We cannot. That's the reason we're here, to be in the school buildings with the students. But to answer your question, I was not an employee of the district at the time. I was working with the Ohio Department of Youth Services on the parole board. And, so we still got the same information of the pandemic and things changing. And I remember that I believe if the dates were the same, it was around the same time of the Ohio High School Girls State Finals weekend. And so it affected, schools statewide. They had student athletes already on the floor at St. John Arena and, being pulled off. And I believe it was the same approach with the NCAA. So it just filtered all over the place. What do you do now? So just staying in tune to the television and seeing what's going on. And again, not working here, I can only just imagine the impact of just staff and the kids being sent home and not understanding what is really going on in the world today.
Yes, so gentlemen, I think you kind of hit on my next question. I was going to ask how we responded, prepared, and supported remote learning. When it comes to operations, we don't always make that connection between operations and teaching and learning. So if you could just tell us a little bit about how your departments really supported that change into that remote teaching and learning and even the hybrid teaching and learning. So we had two different pedagogies that really occurred during this time period that have never been done before. And they required different trains of thought when it comes to supporting our students and our families and our communities. So was there anything that happened within your departments during this time that we have sustained, that we're continuing even after the quote unquote end of COVID?
So the Evolve system came in play after we returned to school. Okay. So, through the ESSER funds, I know you're going to probably talk about that a little later, there was opportunities for the district to receive those grant funds to improve and enhance some of the security equipment and devices that were being deployed already. So I know one of the bigger things we started with was the metal detectors. So those were purchased, and planning went into that on how we would deploy those to the schools, as well as how we will, facilitate the logistics of getting kids into the classroom safely and not being late. So I was here during that part when that equipment did come in, and it was a struggle at the beginning because students were late to class. Because as we've talked about, a metal detector, it's no different than going through the airport. It's what it is. It detects metal. So every piece of metal that a person would have on them, the system will alarm, and that will cause for an additional screening of that individual, which caused long lines and backup. So through continual observation and vetting some best practices and new technology, we were fortunate enough to have the Evolve High-Speed Weapons Detections team come in and support the process by a few examples at a couple schools to see how it really works for us. And because of that opportunity to see the product and how it works for Columbus City schools, we again began to explore that even further and was able to utilize ESSER funds to receive that equipment at the high school level.
And that is something that we've been able to sustain.
Yes, and we've been able to sustain that. And ironically enough, Tracie, today is our 1-year anniversary of the implementation of our Evolve systems at the high schools.
And now it seems like it's just always been there.
It seems like it's always been there, but today was just like the first day because with our systems, there's always software updates. And we are always experimenting with the updates to see what does it work best for Columbus City schools. And so today we did some experimenting on the 1st-year anniversary, and it kind of took us back a little bit, but helped us move forward at the same time. So we're able to sustain that, and we're looking at other opportunities within the district on how that best suits us to assure that we're providing higher levels of safety through any kind of event.
Thank you for that. Jeff, what about buildings and grounds? Is there anything that started during the pandemic that we've been able to sustain?
So in operations, the biggest purchase the operations had was new HVAC systems and other improvements with ESSER dollars. Having new systems allows buildings and grounds to operate the buildings not only more efficiently, but with better services, which is great. The classrooms are more comfortable than they have ever been. The energy usage that we are seeing in buildings after adding air conditioning is actually even lower than it was before the renovations. So we're even actually saving money on utilities, even with the addition of air conditioning, because of the better systems and the better operational schemes. Our staff can repair them easier because we can see remotely what is happening in a lot of these systems. So that's been huge. Operation Fix-It started that work, but ESSER was able to finish that work for the remaining buildings that had not yet been converted to modern air conditioning systems.
And I can tell you, as somebody who goes in and out of those buildings, definitely has been noticed. It's been exciting to see students and families and teachers be able to really take that teaching and learning environment to the next level. And I know, as with any large district, we still have pockets where things are still being worked out, right? We're still doing some trial and error with some things, but it definitely has made a difference. When we transitioned back into in-person teaching and learning, we didn't come directly back. We had that phase of hybrid where we had those buildings that were some days open and some days closed. We had half classrooms coming in every other day. We're going to be talking in our next episode with transportation about what that looked like for the buses. Can you just tell us in your department what that transition into hybrid teaching and learning looked like for you guys? Because again, your departments really function in the school buildings. So as we were able to reopen slowly into that hybrid situation, what kind of changes or impact did that have in your departments?
Well, I can say that in buildings and grounds, we had panic level frenzy work setting up what we called COVID barriers, plastic partitions to stop the direct breathing from one person to another. We had to install custom barriers in many, many, many places, in addition to the district purchased standard ones to go onto desks that the custodial team installed. That was coupled with a screening of every single classroom in the district to make sure that we had proper ventilation rates, that we are bringing fresh air to minimize the amount of pollutants in the air as students are breathing. The district has 3,000 classrooms, 10 HVAC technicians. So there was a lot of work to make sure that these rooms were safe for the return with students. We were able to find that because the district had generally decent enough buildings from the beginning, that we only had one building with only a few classrooms in it that had no ventilation system at all. But we were able to make sure that the ventilation systems worked in all of these buildings.
And that is a heavy, heavy lift.
It's a lot at once, because we were typically concerned most with hot or cold. Fresh air is important, but it became really, really important with the return during the pandemic.
I would say probably for our staff just to be reintegrated back into society. You know, going back into the schools, the concerns, the anxieties that built up from, you know, when they used to see the kids, they probably would give them high fives and things that nature. Now they're walking around with masks on and can't really have the humanistic approach of smiling at a student.
3 feet apart.
You know, you're separated, you're wearing gloves. It was difficult. When I talked with the staff, they said that transition back hybrid, even into the full time, was a very rough time for them. You know, and even today, just still the concern. Every now and then you'll see someone walking around with a mask and everyone's anxiety still rises. So it was a very tough transition for the safety and security staff in the buildings.
Again, that building relationships, it's person to person. And when you're 3 feet apart, it's hard to get that connection.
Yeah, and it was
built.
a struggle for the children, for the students. You know, again, they're back out in communities and back into the school where they feeling, you know, they missed that and they want to see somebody and hug them. They're like, I can't do that. And, you know, and you have an adult also saying, hey, you have to stay back right now. So
And it hurts your soul.
It hurts their soul.
It does.
Absolutely.
It hurts your soul. Yeah. So that makes me think of a question that I don't have written down. So I'm going to go off script. What was something that was the biggest surprise to you during this whole pandemic, through whether it was at the beginning, the middle, or now we're coming to the end of it, whether it was something with ESSER funding or the hybrid, the return to in-person? What was something during this whole process that just kind of surprised you or made you take pause?
I didn't realize the level at which people could find ways to complain about decisions that were made. It didn't matter what the governor, didn't matter what anybody did, they were wrong.
Yeah.
And that taught me a little bit about the human psyche, and I think as a result, it made me understand where some people might be coming from so I can react in an appropriate way and maybe even manage better as a result.
Yeah, when you're scared and you don't know something and the data's changing, the facts are changing, it's very scary. And I think sometimes when we're scared, our natural reaction is just go back to what we know. So anything new is wrong.
That could be it.
Could be.
I think on the flip side, it also gave the world an opportunity to say professionals are professionals. Working from home is not always a bad thing. You know, I know the schools are a little different because we need that, but just looking at it throughout the nation and the state of Ohio, people were more productive at some point working at home. So I think that was a shock to a lot of folks. And, you know, again, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Looking at the state of Ohio, they've shut down several state office buildings, and folks are now permanently working from home because they realize we don't have to see you every day to, you know, keep my eye on Jeff to make sure Jeff is working, and I can look at Jeff's product like, wow, Jeff is doing more work at home than he did when he was here. Because but what it does too is it reduces that social interaction. And I used to always call it lost work hours, because we're at the coffee table, we're at the water fountain, we're just out and about talking, and less work is getting done.
So let's end with this question. What is the one thing that you would like the public to know about your department that might have been highlighted by the ESSER funding?
Well, for me in safety security, the benefits of having that time with ESSER funding and increasing the staffing levels was humongous. And because we were able to spread the love, we were able to put staff in schools that primarily didn't have a safety security staff member present every single day, you know, primarily like our elementary schools, you know. So having and receiving those additional staff members helped us be able to expand the coverage, the support to some of the schools that didn't have it on the front end. And fortunately enough, we're going to hopefully be able to continue that and then be able to support those schools that do not have, that are in need of safety security support. So that is a big thing. And, you know, just continue to vet other ideas that come from those new minds that are coming in.
Sustainability, right? We were
Absolutely.
able to make some progress, and now to sustain it so that everybody feels that safety when they come to school, and be able to take some of those fears, put them aside, and focus on teaching and learning.
Yes.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being with us today. We have certainly learned a lot about building and grounds and safety and security, and how ESSER funding has impacted both of your departments and brought about some sustainability. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for putting this together, Tracie.